there, and welcome again to Frankie Sense and More. I feel like I've seen you guys a lot this week. I've had more shows this week than in a while, so this is kind of fun. But today it's Frankie Sense, it's not Mission Unstoppable, and I have a wonderful guest today. I have the great pleasure, and you do too, to learning about Liam Riley. He's an author, publisher, historian, father of four, and a grandfather whose life was so impacted by his own grandfather, Papa Lehman, that he couldn't stop thinking about him, even though he passed away in 1973 when Lehman was about 10 years old. Now, Lehman was born and raised in Minneapolis. He attended college and worked his adult life as a driver and a warehouse manager, and then he became a senior machine operator for the Lutheran Brotherhood before a merger caused him to leave his job. And he became a full-time author of a series of children's books featuring his grandfather as a lead character and historian in The Adventures of Papa Lemon's Little Wanderers. Now, in his books, he introduces youngsters to the Wanderers, a tight-knit group of friends who, despite their racial diversity, have a strong friendship and similar values. And each of the kids adopted Papa Lemon as if he was his own grandpa, and he takes them to key events in history, teaching life lessons along the way. Welcome to the show, Lehman.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you for having me on.
It's really my pleasure. You know, you started thinking about doing this book in I guess maybe you've been thinking about him all this time. Now, your grandfather, before we get to that, I want to talk about your grandfather for a moment, because you told me that he was born in the 1800s.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. He lived in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So you were from the north, and he lived in the deep south, and you would visit him, and you enjoyed those visits. But it must have been a very different experience for you going from the north to the south.
Well, yeah, it was really exciting, actually. We never really experienced racism with my
You did not?
Never. I mean, he was so well-liked in Mississippi by Black and white that I thought he was like a celebrity, because when I would walk in town with him, you know, I hear Black and white calling, "Hey, Lemon, how you doing?" And Lemon, and he would introduce me to all these older people, and they would ask me what's it like up north and how do I like it down south. But Papa Lemon, he was a very special man in that it was a small town called West Mississippi, and he was one of the prominent families, Black families in Mississippi. We had over 200 acres of land.
So he was a landowner?
Landowner,
and he owned his own car.
He was the first Black man to have a car in Mississippi. Wow. That town, it was a Model T car. My mother would tell me about it, how they used to have to crank it up, and you know, they'd drive off to church and everything. And then, while the other families were still using horse and wagons and stuff.
And he was married to Mama Sarah.
Mama Sarah, my grandmother, for 56 years, I believe they were married, and you know.
And I said your grandfather died in 73, but your grandmother lived to be 101.
101, yeah.
Wow.
She seen my first book 3 weeks before she passed away.
Oh.
And she was telling me, "Oh, your grandfather would be so proud of you. But don't forget about me." So I incorporated Mama Sarah in the books also. So
Mama Sarah is good for the lemonade and making the goodies, right?
Yeah, she was a very good cook and a very soft-spoken lady. I mean, I never heard her raise her voice as a kid or even as an adult. And she was the pillar of the family, because whatever
was he your mom's or your dad's parent?
My mom's parents.
Okay.
And you know, my favorite things I remember with my grandfather, we'd play checkers. We'd always get a brand new checkerboard every time I would go visit, either down south or he would come up. My mom would get us a checkerboard, and we would play checkers and drink Dr. Pepper Pop, you know, and those were my really good memories I had of my grandfather, and how he would laugh and tell these stories. And, you know, he was just a really cool guy. And still to this day, people talk about my grandfather, that I never even met these people, but my uncle would tell me, you know, your grandfather was, your dad saying this to my uncle, was such a funny man, and he had just a way about him that would bring everybody just to him to just, you know, listen to his stories and listen to him, you know, sing his little songs and stuff like that. So he was a really special man, how he could have everyone just come to him and just, you know.
He looks like a really interesting guy. Like there's just something about him. He's got this very distinguished look.
Yeah. He was a very proud man, and he would never let anyone, Black or white, come against his family. And even like in the South, when he wasn't afraid to let put people in their place, even the white people back in Mississippi, and then they say, "Oh, that's Lemon, he's okay," you know, because, you know, he helped out a lot of families by, you know, with schools, by giving meat, because he had it on his land. So, and some of the families didn't have the meat to feed their kids. So he would, get a hog and chop it up and send it to the schools and stuff like that. So
Oh, wow.
he was a special man. And, it's funny that you never learn about people until you investigate stories. And my grandparents were really good friends with Oprah Winfrey's grandparents.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. They would always go to each other's house for Sunday dinners. Either they would go to my grandparents or they would go to Oprah Winfrey's grandparents. And Oprah's dad used to like my mom. So they never really went out. My mom wouldn't go out with them, but he was the first guy that gave my mom a note to go out with them,
Wow.
So, that's why I get kids to try to dig and find your family history.
That's very cool. Now you had a spiritual experience. That's all you can call it, right? You had a spiritual experience. Tell us about it.
Well, it was, I don't know.
Was it 92?
Yeah, it was a 91.
91.
And
okay.
It was right after the Rodney King beating.
Oh,
sure
okay.
You've heard of that.
Yeah, who hasn't?
I was watching that, and I was like, I went to bed that night, and I couldn't sleep. I just kept hearing God speaking to me. I need you to write a story. And I'm like, I haven't wrote a story since college, I'm like, write a story about what? Like, I want you to use your grandfather to teach kids about each other's cultures, contributions. I'm like, what am I going to do? How am I going to write these stories? I got the stories for you. You just need to dictate what I give you.
Oh, so it was just a download from Spirit.
My God.
Before you go on, though, I just want to ask you, because I had two questions. What did you take in college?
I went to school for counseling, and I was going to actually try to be a police officer because my roommate, we played high school football together. So we went to college together, so we were college roommates, and he always wanted to be a police officer. And he was trying to talk to me, and we could be cops and this and that. And so I took it for one semester, and I'm like, well, man, this is, I'm not a police officer. That's not my type. But he went on, and he's been a cop for a sergeant. Actually, he's an investigator for 34 years. And
wow. My daughter's going to be a cop soon.
Yeah, so he was on the TV show 48, the first 48.
Oh, is he? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so it's funny to see him out there do that. But I went for counseling, and I wanted to be a marriage counselor and stuff like that.
Well, you see a little bit of that coaching, counseling in your books. Okay, so did you always like to write?
No.
No. Okay.
I was always a good storyteller. I always used to tell stories to my younger brother. But how I got into writing was in college. I was short a couple of credits. And I'm like, I'll take this writing course, no big deal. And so I wrote my first story, and to my surprise, they published it. And I didn't consider myself a writer, so I'm 18 years old. I'm like, whatever, And it was about my grandmother. And it was about the strongest person that I ever knew. It was about my grandmother, and my biggest regret is not letting her see that story because I was just, procrastinating. 18-year-old, I'll get it to you, Grandma. I'll get it to you, and next thing you know, the school closed, and I didn't have access because this is before computers and all of that.
Wow!
And I didn't have the copy, and so she never got the chance to see that story. So I use that when I'm in classrooms about not to be a procrastinator.
That's a good one. Did you grow up with diverse friends, racially diverse friends, or
it was more, my community was more African American, but when we go to school, there was sprinkles of, white friends, and that one kid, his name was Kim Pete, and he was a Native American, and he was real quiet.
Was he maybe for like that book that you wrote on
the Navajo? No, I didn't even put that together. How I came across the Navajo Wind Talkers was I was watching the History Channel.
That was a good movie.
I had never heard of them.
Yeah.
I had never heard of the Navajo Wind Talkers. I'm watching the History Channel, and I'm learning all of this stuff, and I'm like, wow, these guys are incredible. So I thought, kids need to hear about that. We hear too much about the same history. And we need to spread out, and so many cultures have done so many things in history, and all of our cultures have impacted American history.
So did you always have a love for history?
I did. I always liked history, and more of my grandfather, because I used to get in trouble because I would just daydream and about my grandfather. I'm like, oh, he's born in the 1800s. I'm in the third grade thinking this. I'm like, what did he look like? I knew he could do this, and I knew he could do that, and the farm and this. And, you know, he worked the railroads. And, you know, I was just always fascinated about my grandfather. And it would get me in trouble because I wasn't paying attention in the classroom. So they thought I had a learning disability because I would never pay attention. And I would just tell them I'm bored. You know, I'm tired
Yeah.
of hearing the same stories. And when
Yeah.
I open up a book, I don't see anybody that look like me. And, you know, that's another reason why I wrote these books, because I wanted to be multicultural. Kids can see
And I
all
like
these.
that it's multicultural. I like that it's not just, all one culture, because I
Mhm.
think that's not the world we live in today,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And the illustrator, is it always the same person who illustrates the book?
I started out with one guy named Joshua Wallace. He did the watercolor version, and he's a good illustrator. And I got
They're
him from
beautiful.
college. And then I wanted to, tighten up the images and make it more crisp. And so I moved on to a different illustrator, which she lives in India.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was a really difficult transition to get the illustrations and the communications, because I'm being like, oh, I'm an American, you should understand me and this and that. And I'm got to understand that our words don't translate the same way. And it was very difficult, but I learned to
Communicate.
break it down more. And yeah, so now she did an excellent job. So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
very,
I love working with the
mhm,
guys from India. They just did my last website, and I had the best time. And they
yeah.
got me, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys got me. I love you. So okay, so you got this group of friends,
Mhm.
multicultural friends, and you're giving them history lessons, but you're
Mhm.
also giving them value
Yep.
lessons.
Life
And
lessons.
and so you've got your book was I love that they met Martin Luther King. They
Yep.
met these Abraham Lincoln, and we're
Mhm.
going to talk about that book because where he experienced depression. So you talk about
Mhm.
the kids during the depression,
Right.
and you've got the bullying
Yep.
book, and
Mhm.
the Harriet Tubman was that
Mhm.
for
Harriet
anti-slavery,
Tubman. Yep. Yep.
and you got
Babe
7 books.
Dietrichson. Babe Dietrichson. I'm teaching kids about great female athletes. It's so funny when I go in classrooms. They always assume Babe Dietrichson is Babe Ruth.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
no, Babe Dietrichson was a phenomenal athlete. He played more than baseball, basketball, Olympic gold medalist in track and field, and one of the reasons why we have the LPGA. And by the way, she's a woman, and the kids be like, "What?" They'd be like, "Oh,
So you're
shocked."
traveling to schools now, and
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, what a great career for you.
I've met with about 20,000 kids, and
Does that
it's
blow your mind that you went
I,
from a machine operator to this?
yeah, and it was so funny because I kept putting it off because it was a good job, and I'm making okay money. But when I wouldn't act, I guess God said, okay, I'm going to nudge you out because
That's what God
now
does.
the company merged with our competitor. And so my position left, and I'm like, well, you know what? This is my opportunity to do what I'm supposed to do. So I call this my assignment in life. And I hope I'm doing it justice, because my goal is to get kids to see each other's history, learn about each other. And once you know more about your family history, you want to
Yeah,
share it. And that's how I get kids to write. That's
yeah.
another thing, because I want them to be able to, start writing and,
But you're
enjoy.
changing the world. You're changing the world because you're changing their outlook to the world. And now
Mhm.
your cousin, Paul Dixon,
Yep.
became your partner, your business partner in this
Yeah.
venture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so his role is what?
He's
A publisher,
more the administrator.
the administrator.
He does
And I
the.
want to get this right. So I'm going to go to my notes here for 1 second. You started your publishing house, and where did I put that? Oh,
Oh,
I
04.
can't find it. Um, and you call it. You may as well tell me because I can't. It's the American. It's
It's
the African American
Matter of Africa America Time.
Matter of Africa.
For.
Where did that come from? It's a
Well,
strange.
it's funny how that came about is because, when I started writing my stories, I said, well, I needed a logo, and I needed, like Hat in the Hat is Dr. Seuss and this and that. So I said, how can I come up with something that's going to incorporate history? And I'm writing about African American history. So I created a hourglass, and it's all trademarked. I use it's an hourglass with the word Africa in the top. in red, black, and green, and America in red, white, and blue in the bottom of the hourglass. And then above it, it says matter of time.
Oh,
And so it's talking about African history, American history merging together. And
yeah.
I actually had a clothing line that carried it. Macy's carried my clothing line when I created that. And I was
Wow.
really excited. So I can say I had a clothing line, I created books, I produced a little animated short, and I actually did a little movie stint back in the day. I did a little bit of acting, so it was
Nice.
so.
So do you go do you go around to different places like during Black History Month and teaching more so than other times of the year?
Oh yeah, I don't want to be pigeonholed and say, okay, this is you get the Black author, and now you're gonna be here for Black History Month. I will go, but
Yeah.
my books are just covering all types of history, just like heart disease.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing stories that's social. I wrote that book because my niece suffered a heart attack 1 week after she had her baby.
Oh, wow.
And so while I was at the hospital looking at her in her room with all these tubes and stuff, I'm in the waiting room and I'm looking, there's no books on heart disease for kids to understand. So I
Yeah.
wrote a book about Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, the first successful open heart surgeon. And so kids can understand more about heart disease and heart awareness, healthy hearts, and why his surgery was the first successful. Now, there were many before
Wow.
him, but the
Yep.
patients would die. And he
Oh.
figured out why they were dying. So,
I want to talk about Abraham Lincoln and the battle with depression.
mhm.
You received, this is phenomenal, Lehman. You received an endorsement from the executive director of NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness of Minnesota, asking groups that they serve to support your efforts to teach youth because 1 in 5 may experience mental illness. You also received a letter from a child and adolescent psychiatrist, Dr. Daniel, is it Houston?
Houston.
Yeah, from Abbott Northwestern Hospital in Minneapolis, also, who states, I'm just gonna quote him here for a moment. I treat youth and their families, they are in their greatest time of need with significant suicide risk. Often they express feelings of being alone, isolated from their peers, while parents are afraid to open up to others about their struggles. Personally, I believe that my clinical work is enhanced when the patient and I can collaborate to produce a narrative of their life story and how depression has entered in as if it were a character that came onto the scene. Mr. Lehman's story brings the young reader into a very nice understanding of what depression is like for a young person, providing encouragement to those that suffer, for peers to be supportive in practical ways. Wow! You must be so proud.
I am. I never really thought I'd be writing a book on depression. And, as I go around to all these schools, I notice a lot of kids who are having emotional issues. And when
Yeah.
I talk about my story about my grandfather and the last time I seen my grandfather laying in the casket, it triggers something in these kids. And they want to tell their story, what their trauma was like, or what's their hurt and what's their anxiety. And, listening to those kids, and then my own daughter who battles depression, I didn't understand depression. When my
Yeah.
daughter was going through it, I'm like, what are you depressed about?
Get
I mean,
happy.
yeah, like you got, you're in dance, you got both your parents, and you're doing this and you're doing
Yeah.
that. What
Kids
are
are
you
starving
depressed
in
about?
Africa.
Yeah,
I
and until
get it.
her episode, I had to be educated when
Yeah.
she went through it and listening to the psychologist and the therapist and like, oh my God, because it's a trauma, it's a
It
chemical
is.
imbalance, it's
I
a
have a son with the
genetic.
same
So
disease. Yeah.
yeah, so
It's
it's
hard.
like, yeah, and when I was a kid, so many kids needed to have therapy, but our therapy was you better start acting right.
Yeah. Smack your butt and get on with it. Exactly. Hard work.
Yeah, so it's
So
like, no,
I don't do a lot of people know that Abraham Lincoln suffered with depression?
no.
No.
And it's, I'm sort of surprised that a lot of educators don't know that. I'm like, wow, you guys don't know this story. He was severely depressed. I mean, he was suicidal. I mean,
Wow.
it started when his mother passed away, and he didn't have that really strong relationship with his father. And then the girl he really loved, she passed away.
Mm.
And that spiraled him even more. And then he, went on to marry his wife. She had mental health issues. And then the death of his kids, and dealing with the Civil
Heartbreaking.
War. slavery and all of this stuff that's he went through, and he still became one of our greatest presidents. So I wanted
Yeah.
to use his example to let kids know there's always going to be that light. Just keep going for that light, that there's hope. And, the story is about a little girl who's battling with depression, and, she's even cutting herself. And, it's a lot of truths in this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want parents to embrace it. And that's my hardest sell is this book, because people are afraid if my kids read this book, they're going to have depression. And it's totally the opposite.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're catching the signs. My daughter, she was a great masker, and she could mask, and she would see you, come give you a hug, and you would never know. And then she gets home in her safe spot, and then she just blow up. And I'm like, what are you so mad about? And she gets all mad and go in her room, and until she couldn't do it anymore. And
Wow.
so I get the call that she tried to commit suicide, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
what? And I'm just on her birthday, her 16th birthday.
Oh no.
Like, what? And I'm just like trying to because we just talked before she went to school, and we're going to go out for dinner and this and that, and
Wow.
that happens, and so it's a battle, and that is
Is she
one
okay
thing.
today?
She's doing good. She's working
Stable.
for Medica, and now she's actually might be working for a school district, and she has a little daughter, and my first granddaughter.
Zora.
So
She's
yeah,
adorable.
yes.
Dennis Scott, if you're listening, I want you to contact our friend here, Lehman Riley. Dennis Scott is a friend of mine, and he is you have to write this book. He is a fifth generation Canadian
Okay.
whose family came up on the railroad.
Oh.
He runs the Emancipation Festival. I think it's about the 138th year of the Emancipation Festival in Aurelia, where one of the spots where they came out from the railroad to Canada. And with your grandfather being an engineer on a train, I mean, it's a perfect story for you to write.
Well, actually, he was not an engineer. He was a linesman. He would
Oh, a
lay
linesman.
the
Okay.
track. So that's what he did. He did that for 47 years, never missed work. And he
Wow.
just really, he started out as a water boy. And then he got hired a year early because he was so young, but they really liked him and had him be a linesman. And he used to, lay the tracks and say the cadence and stuff like that for the guys to, follow suit what he's supposed
Wow.
to do. So, yeah.
So your books are geared to grade 3. It blows my mind because how do you know what grade, where these kids are at? But
I think it's because you need to get them early and get them excited. And how you're going to get kids excited, you got to have a fun tool. So the magical train will always get kids excited. And they want to say, oh, well, this train will take me somewhere. But the books have been used in middle school. And I even spoke at a high school where my depression book was really well received.
That would be a good one.
They're not, the books, some people might, you won't see them as a little kid book, the way it's wrote and the way the illustrations are. And, the context of the stories. You can read it to a young kid and an adult can read it.
Yeah.
So it's a nice blend on, it's not too hard for a kid, and it's not too soft for an adult or a high school.
I think they're great. I enjoyed reading it. I really enjoyed reading it.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I have. So how many more in the series?
Well, I have 8 right now, and I have 2 more that are done, but I'm not putting it out just yet. We're going to wait because we need to get more sales. Self-publishing, and you got to get that revenue to start streaming
Especially in color, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're just waiting to get book 9 and 10 out. I already have it written and just tucked away,
Are you going to stick with the young kids? Are you going to move up to?
I have one book that's sort of mirrors my life. It's actually a biography about my life, and it's called Betrayal of the Valley. And
Betrayal of the Valley?
Yes, and it's about my experiences in college and how you're used for football.
Yeah.
And the school chews you up and use your abilities and when you don't get that plateau, like, oh, let's bring in the next crop. They're
Yeah.
always hunting for that next. So it's about my experiences from into high school, college, and a little bit after my college life. So that's down the line. But my priority is my Papa Lemon books. Yeah.
They're wonderful. And I hope that everybody who is listening to this today and who's listening live and who's listening in the future will run to get these for your children and grandchildren. They're a beautiful story. You can read it to them or they can read it for themselves. But there's not a whole lot of good in this world at the moment, not good news anyway. And this is a really wonderful tool to help children look at each other in a different way, and from a heart-centered way,
Yep.
and not from a head way. You were about to tell me what President Trump did this. So why don't you tell me what he did?
Well, what he didn't do.
What did he do today?
Just Michael Cohen just came out with a little bit of information.
Did he?
Yeah.
What did he say? Tell me what he said.
We don't know. It's just.
Oh, you don't know? Oh,
no,
okay.
It's just some information. So.
Brent, are you with us? I don't know, Brent. I can see that he's there, but I don't know if he's on. If his mic is on. Brent, are you with us right now, or? He probably went away for a few minutes. I know that one of the movies we're going to talk about is The Green Book. Have you seen it?
No.
Fabulous book, fabulous movie, fabulous movie. You should see it if you can. So we're going to talk about that today. Brent's going to come on and talk about the movies in a little bit. Okay. What else do you want to tell me?
Well, I want to let you know that you can purchase my books on Amazon.com.
Yep.
So
I've been there. I saw. You can.
Or my website, papalemonedu.com, where you can learn more about my ventures with Papa Lemon and how I got the business going. But what I would like to say is my books, I want kids and families to be able to dig in and learn about their family history. Because once you get to know that, you get that pride about your family, and then you want to share it. And with the classrooms, how I have the kids do their assignments. I always have them go home and interview grandma or grandpa or someone in their family who's a senior, and bring in something that's really special that you could talk about. And when the classrooms start doing that, they start becoming a community.
Yeah.
And so they start knowing each other. So we all have a story, and that's the whole thing. We all have a story to tell, and it's not just American history as one way.
Let me ask you something. Do you think children today or people today, they dismiss the elderly as being slow, stupid, they don't know anything?
Because of technology.
Yeah.
Technology, even with my kids, I'm like, I don't know this stuff. I'm like, Dad, come on, I'm like, well, we didn't have computers.
You don't use Instagram? Go on.
You gotta, and I try to do the Instagram thing. I'm like, what am I?
I don't understand Snapchat. Okay, guys, I don't understand Snapchat. Why would you take a picture that lasts for a second? Like, I don't get it.
I'm like, whatever. So, I mean, we have so much technology today. Now I tell my business partner, I say, we need a little bit of Mayberry because we're just going too fast.
Yeah.
Mayberry's Andy Griffith show.
Yeah. Well, most people don't know that anymore, but if you're our age, you do.
Yeah, it's so fast, and we're just going boom, boom, boom. I said, we're going to hit a wall one day. We can't continue at this rate.
Yeah.
And we need to just pump our brakes sometimes, and understand where we came from. We're so worried about, we got to get there, but understand how we got here. We got to respect what was done to get us here. And I mean, not all history was good, as we know, but, with our inventions and our leaders and, what they did so we can get here, even in your own family, what your grandparents did so we can be here, it's so important. I mean, the stories my grandmother would tell me about how they grew up together with her and Papa Lemon, is like, wow, how can we not, when I hear these stories, and Papa Lemon, his real name was Walter.
Walter Lemon?
No, Lemon wasn't even.
Lemon wasn't even his name?
Walter Kane was his name. And I'm like, when I started writing the books, I asked my mom, I'm like, well, why do we call him Papa Lemon? And so when he was really 2 years old in 1898, he was really cranky. His mom said, you're sour as a lemon.
Oh my gosh.
And so no one ever called him Walter after that. was always Lemon. The adults called him Lemon. And then my oldest cousin, Skippy, started calling him Papa Lemon.
Oh, that's so
She would
cute.
always go to this is 1941. Papa
Wow.
Lemon and Mama Sarah. So even on his driver's license, it said Lemon Kane. The
Really?
tombstone, it was Lemon. No one ever called him Walter,
I love
ever.
that.
It was always Lemon.
Does Mama Sarah have a cookbook? I think Mama Sarah should have her recipes in a book.
She has it. It's in my mom's head. I keep telling my mom, you need to do this. You need to.
Yeah.
These
I think the
cakes
kids, it would be
made.
great. Kids are, you know, they're cooking today. They love to watch those shows. Be
Yeah.
great if they could make those lemon squares that are in your
God.
book. Or
Yeah, I was like, you need to just, document. She said, oh, I can't write that stuff down. It's just in my head. I just go by, dump this.
well,
put
you write it down and put it in your book, like at least a recipe a book.
Yeah, have a little page in the back of Mama Sarah's
Yeah,
Mama Sarah's tea cakes or whatever what she used to make.
that'd be
Like, here's the
awesome.
ingredients. But I've been telling my mom, oh, you got to do this. Yes, you can't just. Oh, I don't have that. And she's retired now, and I'm like, Mom, you got all this time. I don't feel like it.
Oh my goodness, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Brent, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're back. Okay, hi.
Hello.
Say hi to Lehman.
Hello, Lehman. I've been really enjoying listening to your stories.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. Lehman, you can stick around with us and listen to the movies here, or you can, say hello and goodbye. And but I'd love to have you stick around if you want. Brent is going to take us. Brent is an award-winning author. He is the Good Radio and the Good Media Network's movie correspondent, and he, the end of the month, every month, he brings us some movies, and then every year we do the Oscars. So I'm very excited to hear about the movies that you have for us today, Brent.
Well, there's some really great movies that are coming out right now, and they're coming fast and furious too, as we're right in the midst of award season, with so many coming out right now. One thing I want to advise listeners to do is, if you want to see them in theaters, don't waste any time, because they're coming and going rather quickly because of that. So for starters today, we have the film Can You Ever Forgive Me, which has been in theaters for about a month right now. And it tells the film biography story of an author named Lee Israel, who was at one time a best-selling New York Times bestseller list author who had fallen on hard times in the early 90s, and she had to find a new way to make a living. Unfortunately, she ended up following kind of a rather dubious path. She accidentally discovered a literary letter while doing research for a new book project, and thought, maybe I can pawn this and get some quick cash from this, because I need the money desperately. And she found out that she could, and from that, she basically grew a whole new business of forging and fencing the literary letters of famous authors and celebrities. And
I'm going to share the screen for a moment. I'll share my screen while you're talking. Just give me a sec, and we can look at that. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the poster. Yeah. Okay. There's the poster from Lee Israel. It's Melissa McCarthy stars in it.
Yeah, and Melissa McCarthy is terrific in this part. It's very encouraging to see that she really has the chops to do something other than just the comedies that she's been doing all this time, because this is a much more substantial and serious role than she's done in a lot of her other films. She also has a kind of a partner in crime in the film, played by Richard E. Grant, and he is also fantastic. He helps to fence some of the materials that she's trying to pass off. This is the kind of film that, when I first saw the trailer for it, I thought, that seems like kind of an odd subject to make into a movie, but they did a great job with it. It's got great performances. It's got a lot of wit. Anybody who really appreciates good writing will appreciate this film, because a lot of the literary references from the letters and from the authors who wrote some of the works whose letters she's forging make it into the script. So this is really I won't say it's highbrow, but it's certainly a little more elevated from a lot of your typical movie fare.
And I love how it's her best work. Her best work has been forgery.
Yes.
Right? Her best work is forgery. It's like, if you can write that well, go back and write your books and sell them.
Well, this film has it just recently picked up a couple of Independent Spirit Award nominations. I was a little surprised to see that Melissa McCarthy kind of got snubbed in that competition because she's quite good, but she's got a lot of competition this year, so that's not really all that surprising in some ways. This one, as I say, it's been in theaters for about a month, so if you want to see it in the theater, I would recommend going pretty soon because I don't think it's going to be in theaters for a whole lot longer. But it's really worth it. It's a terrific film, and I think it's going to be in the running come award season time.
Okay. Here's the one I think is going to win the award.
Yes, this is one that's really been it's been kind of a divisive film in many ways. It's Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the film biography of the heavy metal band Queen and particularly their lead singer Freddie Mercury. This is one where people have either pretty much loved it or hated it. Personally, I really liked it a lot. It's my
favorite movie. It's my
really
new favorite movie, and my husband's new favorite movie. And you know what? I don't see things twice, but I would go see this twice.
Well, the concert recreation sequences are just phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, the actor who plays Freddie Mercury, Rami Malek, is fantastic. He really captures the moves and the look and everything down to a T.
If he does not get an award for that performance, like that'll blow my mind.
I don't know if he's going to win an award, but he's certainly very worthy of a nomination at the very least. He does such a fine job. One of the criticisms that has come up against the film is that the screenwriter and I guess the director have sort of played a little fast and loose with some of the facts. Now, that's as a former journalist, I mean, I'm somebody who really tries to strive for authenticity as much as possible, but by the same token, I don't really know of any biopic that hasn't, played with the truth just a little bit.
It's called artistic license.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes necessary to tell a better story.
Yeah.
And in this case, yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a real stickler for authenticity, there are a number of things that are not exactly by the book or by the record. So that has turned off some people. Personally, to me, it gets points off of a film that doesn't necessarily negate the film's value or quality.
Yeah. I mean, if you can just go and enjoy it for what it was, it's an amazing movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't going there for a biography. It doesn't say it's a biography.
The sequence in particular that's really fantastic is the recreation of the band's performance at Live Aid.
Oh my God.
That was such an authentic recreation in so many ways. And
I cried there, Brent. I cried at that scene, and I left there thinking how fortunate that somebody in an individual's life, if they could just have that one moment, if all of us could have that one moment in our lives that's just beyond anything else. The one reason that you're here, I don't know, it's just so extraordinary. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you on that, because really one of the central themes of this film is the whole notion of, living your life on your own terms. And that's something that Freddie Mercury certainly did.
Yeah.
He was not really afraid of criticism. He was not afraid of people who were trying to, detract him from doing what he wanted to do. He would just go ahead and do it, period. And that really was something that became reflected in the quality of the music that Queen did as a band, because when you look at all of the hits that they had, none of them sound alike.
No,
they all sound very different from one another. And I can't think of too many rock bands other than maybe the Beatles, where that's been the case.
Yeah.
Everything had a very distinctive, separate sound from other bands and from everything else that they did collectively themselves.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and this movie really captures that well. So this one has been in theaters for about a month, and it's had a pretty tremendous staying power. I think it's going to probably be around for a few more weeks. So if you haven't seen it yet, I think you still got some time. Excuse me, because it's not going anywhere. I don't think any very fast. So.
It's so good. I loved it, loved it, loved it. I can't. I'm sorry. You can tell. Can you tell I really like this movie? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so the next film we have has been out for a couple of weeks now, and that's also based on a true story. It's called Boy Erased, which tells the story of a young man who's the son of a fundamentalist Baptist preacher who is struggling with the notion that he might be gay. And basically his parents tell him, the parents are played by Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman, and the son is played by Lucas Hedges. They tell their son that, well, we still love you, but if you want to stay under our roof, you're going to have to go through a conversion therapy program sponsored by the church to turn
Did
you.
you go with Mike Pence?
Yeah. Well, you said that, I didn't, but
I said it.
But it deals with his struggle to try and be true to himself. He's trying to be faithful to what he's known and how he was raised and being loyal to his parents, while at the same time trying to stifle urges that just won't go away, because that's who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so when he's in this program, he gets to see the various reactions that other program participants go through in terms of either capitulating or complying or figuring out ways to sort of fake their way through it. And he has to decide, okay, well, which of these do I want to do for me? So that I can be true to myself, be true to my parents, be true to my faith. And it's a very moving and at times gut-wrenching sort of film to watch, because you can feel the struggle that he's going through as he's trying to figure things out. It features just great performances across the board by Lucas Hedges, Nicole Kidman, Russell Crowe, and Joel Edgerton, who plays the pastor who is the head of the conversion therapy program, who also directed this film. And he did a marvelous job with this. I mean, he's got really quite a great future, I think, as a filmmaker ahead of him. He's done a lot of acting jobs up to this point, but this is, I believe, only his second time doing a feature-length film, and he just knocked it out of the park with this one.
Awesome. Yeah. Good stuff. So, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That you have to change. Yeah.
This one will still probably be around for a few more weeks. It's interesting to note that this is really kind of a very big year for Lucas Hedges, because he has another film coming out in a few weeks called Ben is Back, in which he's been getting quite a bit of recognition for that performance as well. He's really
Julia Roberts. She's his mom in that, right?
Yeah. And he plays a kid who's who's caught up in a drug addiction and drug selling program and tries to get himself out of it. So he's really showing quite a range in his talents through these latest roles, and it's good to see, because I think he's somebody who's got a lot of potential for the future.
Okay. Here's one of my favorite actresses.
Yes, this is another one that's based on a true story. It tells the story of London Times war correspondent Marie Colvin. It's a private war featuring a phenomenal performance by Rosamund Pike, who portrays a war correspondent who did whatever it took to get the story. And she went into places as dangerous as Sri Lanka and Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. I mean, the worst of the worst places to try and go and cover stories like this. She would go in fearlessly and try to get the story, and even putting her own personal safety at risk on a number of occasions, including one time when she lost most of the use of one of her eyes. As you can see from the movie poster, it's got a picture of her with a patch over the eye, which she has throughout most of the film. But
I
basically,
love Stanley Tucci too. He's in it. Oh.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate. Stanley kind of gets sort of a short shrift in this movie. He's only in a couple of scenes, and his role is almost sort of incidental. But the performance of Rosamund Pike and Jamie Dornan as the
Cameraman.
photographer, he's terrific in this as well. It's this is a movie that is kind of difficult to watch if you're on the squeamish or sensitive side, because the recreations of the war zones and the war scenes are pretty authentic.
Wow.
So that's something I would certainly tell people to bear in mind. If they're certainly sensitive or squeamish about that kind of stuff, this probably is not the film for you. However, if you enjoy a heroic film that's rooted in truth, this is one definitely to go see, because you get to see everything that she went through to get the story, and then everything in terms of how it affected her personally. That's why it's called A Private War, because she ended up having this sort of love-hate relationship with what she did.
Mm-hmm.
She hated war zones, but she also felt compelled to be in them. So, she had to come to terms with how do I reconcile this for myself.
That's a pretty amazing, gutsy lady.
It really, really was. So this one's really good. I recommend it a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are we at now?
So next, speaking of war correspondence, we have the film Viper Club, which probably at this point you might have to either wait to watch it on streaming or DVD, because it had a very short run in theaters, and I think it's probably gone from most places, but there still may be a few out there where you can go see it. Viper Club stars Susan Sarandon in a phenomenal performance as a mother whose son, who is a Middle Eastern war correspondent, is kidnapped by a terrorist group and being held for ransom. And she's sort of caught in a quandary of, what can I do to help my son? But having to stay silent by it, because she's been ordered by the government, don't talk about this, don't do anything to raise money, because if you do, we'll throw you in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not based on any one particular story, but there have been several stories similar to this that have been kind of culled to create kind of a composite for her character here. And basically, she ends up having to walk a tightrope between figuring out how she can do what she can do to get her son out, and at the same time comply with the government, and at the same time also work with a group called the Viper Club, which quietly helps to raise money and look for ways to help people who are in the same kind of situation her son is in. Mm-hmm. The other thing that was really interesting about this film is that there are a number of sequences where she has, there's some flashbacks where she's thinking about her son when she was raising him, and she's trying to figure out, why did he end up taking on this kind of work? Because he was probably the person who you would least think would be likely to do something like this. So she's having these moments of introspection about her relationship with her son and trying to understand who he was. But in many ways, all she really needs to do is look to herself, because she works as an emergency room nurse, and the kind of dedication and compassion that she brings to what she does is the same kind of quality that he brings to what he does. And he got those qualities from her.
Wow.
So it's a film that kind of operates on several different levels. And I think with some critics, they didn't like the fact that it was trying to do several things at the same time. Personally, I thought it made it a better film.
Yeah.
So
that's too bad. It had a short run. It sounds really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll be on DVD probably pretty soon, or available for streaming. Watch it definitely for Susan Sarandon's performance.
I love her. She's just always good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of her ever having given a bad performance, but this one is one of the best that she's done in years. And it's unfortunate that it's probably going to go unrecognized come award season, because the film didn't do well at the box office and had such a short run. But,
barely even heard about it.
Yeah. I mean, in Chicago here, it played for a week.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I saw it the day before it closed.
You're lucky. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, like I say, watch it for her performance, and you will probably almost assuredly want to keep a box of hankies
Yeah.
handy when watching it because she's that affecting.
Wow.
Okay, and then lastly, we have a very unusual film from Sweden called Border, which is the country's official entry in the foreign language film category at the upcoming Oscars. This one is, when I say unusual, I really do mean unusual. Um, it's part horror film, part crime drama, part love story, part fantasy. Let's see, what else can we throw in there? It's got some Norse mythology thrown in. It's almost a movie that's almost kind of indescribable in terms of what it actually is, but at the same time, it's also a film that I think is probably one of the best examples I've ever seen of fusion of different genres into one picture.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in it that's quite funny. There's a lot of stuff in it that's quite strange.
And is it still playing?
Yeah, it's still playing. It's primarily playing in art houses.
Yeah.
I think it had one of its it was playing at the Chicago Film Festival back in October and then went into general release after that. So yes, it is out there. You'll probably need to look a little bit for it. But even if you don't see it in theaters, again, I'm sure it'll be available on DVD and streaming probably pretty soon. It's it's a strange one. So if you have a taste for the offbeat, you'll like this one.
Okay.
If you don't like things that are too weird, well then watch Crazy Rich Asians again, I guess.
Yeah, that was a good one. Thank you, Brent. Thanks for bringing these movies to our attention.
My pleasure.
Yeah, there's some good watch and go, you guys. So go out there and hit some movies up. And I just want to, Lehman left us, but go to Amazon, get yourself The Adventures of Papa Lemon's Little Wanderers. It is a fantastic, not one book, there's 7 books. And 8 books, actually. 7 books? I think there's 7 or 8. Anyway, they're all really, really good. And if you've got children or grandchildren that you want to teach some lessons to around bullying or depression or just how to be a good friend, then this group of diverse, multiracial friends is a vehicle to do it. And it's really just a great, great story. And they go off in Papa Lemon's magical train. So it's kind of fun. Okay, well, we're going to leave Facebook. Goodbye. See you guys later. And going to come back over here to the real world. And Brent, thanks again for being on the show. And
my pleasure, Frankie.
We will see you again in a few weeks, I guess.
Yes, and I'm going to have a lot more for you that week because we're getting really into the thick of award season. So I'll have a lot of movies to talk about.
Awesome. So we're going to have a full show. And if you guys are interested in the movies and what to watch over the holidays, if you've got family coming and you want to do something with them, you're going to want to join us. Okay. Take care, everybody. See you later, Brent.
Bye-bye.
Bye.